I could not imagine living in a place that made it a crime to be who I am. But for many parts of the world, that is the reality for LGBTQ people and communities. Fortunately, there are people trying to help. Making its world premiere at hotdocs 2021, the documentary Someone Like Me follows a circle of sponsors helping a gay Ugandan seek asylum in Canada and resettle in Vancouver so he can build a life for himself without fear of being who he is. As part of my coverage of the festival, I had the opportunity to talk with directing duo and couple Sean Horlor and Steve J. Adams about the process of making this film and how the pandemic threw a major wrench in how the story unfolds. Enjoy. Thank you, Sean and Steve, for joining me on this call to talk about your new film, Someone Like Me, which is making its world premiere at hotdocs 2021. So welcome and congratulations on your film being selected for hotdocs.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So for people who are just now hearing about the film, can you give us a brief synopsis on what Someone Like Me is about?
Yeah, I mean, the film really is about freedom. It is also about the power of community. It follows 11 strangers from the queer community in Vancouver as they unite to help Drake, a fun-loving young gay man, escape persecution and violence in Uganda. And it's shot over 15 months. The group of strangers, let's just say the commitment that they've made together is tested, like severely tested. And also it's unexpectedly for us, we had the pandemic happen right in the middle of production. So there are some big challenges in the film.
Some obstacles,
but there's also a lot of humor and yeah. That's the film.
Yeah, then I think it's such an interesting film to watch, and I'll talk more about that. And we'll cover the pandemic as well, because that is a kind of a big component that changes things. But I guess as I was watching the film, there's a turn of events that happens after Drake shows up, and I don't think that I expected that kind of change in the events, and I don't want to spoil what happens in the film. I'm excited for people to see the movie. But kind of as you guys are saying, this story and this production is naturally filled with, unexpected variables and uncertainty. How challenging was it to make this documentary with how much this effort kind of gradually changed over time?
I mean, like, that moment that you're talking about, we didn't expect it either. So it's right after Drake arrives in Canada. And I mean, it caught us, it completely blindsided us. And it's a huge turning point in the film. And I think, I mean, you've talked a little bit about how the characters all, and maybe we should explain that.
So I mean, production, how we had pitched the film, and to stay true to the process of what happens with a sponsorship circle and with Rainbow Refugee is we wanted to make sure that we stayed true to the process. So we didn't know anybody that was going to be filming with us up until about 2 weeks until production started. And we're filming over 15 months. So it's a big commitment to kind of make on a whim. We didn't know who, if the newcomer was going to be able to film with us. We had to wait for them to approach us. So there's a lot of factors at play.
And we had no idea too. I mean, it's completely through the United Nations Human Rights Commission. So they select 3 candidates to send to sponsorship groups, and the sponsorship group makes the selection based on that. And it's like, there are over 70 countries in the world where you can be imprisoned or murdered for being gay or for your gender identity. So it's like, we had no idea if the person was going to come from like Russia, from the Middle East,
Indonesia,
from the Caribbean, from Africa. And it was just that compounded with, we weren't allowed to contact the person to let them know that we were filming or ask them to film. So when Drake arrived in Canada, it was like, started filming with his sponsors. He saw us filming and he approached us and said, I would like to do this with you if it helps someone like me back in Africa. And I mean, there was a moment for us where we're like, okay, we're not going to have basically the person who the film is about might not be in the film. So what are we going to do?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that adds a whole nother level of uncertainty that I didn't even think about. Like, I guess it makes sense watching the movie because he's not chosen when you guys start this production. It seems like you guys are pretty involved with this from almost the very beginning. And so I didn't even think about like, oh yeah, you probably had to get permission in this process. But yeah, so having been involved with this story from almost the very beginning, I guess I'm interested in how you guys came across this story, and how you guys came across like the circle, and how did everything fall into place for this documentary to get started?
Yeah. We had started talking with it's produced by the National Film Board of Canada. And we had started talking to them in 2015. And we were interested in telling a story about the queer community as it is now, where we're headed. And at that time, Trump's coming to power. There's a lot of anti-immigrant, anti-refugee rhetoric. And on the other side, I think that there's people that they're coming together to kind of combat against what that sentiment is. And we were seeing a lot of our friends that were joining rainbow refugee circles. They were coming together. There's basically strangers were coming together from the community to support somebody. And we just thought it was a really interesting story. So we started to do some more research into that. And after about 2 years of research, the NFB was cool with it. The Rainbow Refugee wanted us to tell the story, so we got started there.
And the interesting thing about this too is there's a couple of unique things about Canada. We're the only country in the world that has a refugee program that specifically targets and helps queer people seeking asylum around the world, which is really special. And then we're also one of the only countries in the world where private citizens can come together and form one of these groups and raise the money and help someone seeking asylum resettle in Canada. And in the US, it's pretty special. There's a lot of people in the US who knows what's happening in Canada. They send money to these circles. It is, yeah, we love the support from the US and what people are, how they're getting behind the programs in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a broadcaster, or at least recording here just south of Bellingham in Washington, and so I love coming up to Canada, to Vancouver. It's a really great place to hang out, and really really awesome, queer community, and so it's great that there's that much support for these kind of programs up there, and I wish that would be adopted elsewhere in the world, including, the United States. Like, why don't we have a program like this? So that's so awesome that you guys are bringing awareness to this, and I think that's going to be great for audiences to see at a event like Hot Docs, right, and get that kind of exposure. So you guys, you've done a whole bunch of short films in kind of a relatively short period of time. It seems like you really keep yourselves busy with storytelling, which I think is awesome. That's fantastic. I wonder, how do you guys choose the stories you want to document, and what made you particularly attracted to this group and the circle, and someone like me, to make it into a feature film rather than a short film?
Yeah, I think that we had been doing, I think it's the natural progression for us. We had, when we were going through kind of all of our short docs, it's really just as subjects come to us, or a topic passes us and we find it really interesting, we begin to kind of explore it. And if it has legs, then we'll begin to try to make a movie about it.
There's also two of us. So when you look at we have done a lot of, I think, close to 20 short films in 5 years. That's the joy of doing this with your partner. It's we can, we're super hardworking. We do 14 hours a day, can do 14 days straight. We're really into film. Really like doing this. So
yeah. And someone like me was just, for us, it was just it was screaming to be told. There was the how the groups are formed and the different personalities that are involved. It just had the makings for an interesting story about the queer community, and like Sean said before, just about community. And we thought it would be really good for a movie.
I also think when people do make queer projects, or any community too, it's sort of if we made it about our friends, it would have been an entirely different movie if we had 10 of our friends come together. This sort of the fact that it was 12 complete strangers from all across the LGBTQ spectrum, like from all different parts of lives, all different worldviews. It's like there's rarely another film that we could make where that kind of so many different people would have been brought together and have this one thing that they're working towards as a common goal. And as a portrait of our community, we knew that this was like just to show like representation in such a different way that people may have seen it for the queer community so far. That was so important for us, and we were so fortunate that all these participants and subjects in the film said yes. Like so fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the amount of diversity that exists in this film is great in representation, and it's so cool to see them, working together in this common goal of, trying to resettle someone here to have a more comfortable life with who they are. So, fantastic. And as you're mentioning, there are a lot of stories, a lot of people that are a part of this this film. I'm watching it and I'm thinking, man, this is actually almost like a whole bunch of short films in this one feature film, which is cool. But I think and I guess this is just me kind of giving my own impression on the film, is that it was really cool learning about all these people. I think you did a great job being giving everyone's background and telling us about who everyone is and what their story is. And I particularly mention this because it makes the film really rewarding to watch a second time, because the way that you open it is when you guys ask the question to the subjects, what do you think your relationship will be like with the newcomer? And when you first watch that opening sequence, you're like, well, I kind of want to know what my relationship with these people are going to be like. There's so much that I still have to learn about these people. But the second time that you watch it, or at least that I watched it, I could put personalities to these answers, right? I could more comprehensively understand why they're saying what they're saying. And even with Drake, when he gives his thank you voicemail, like, you don't know who Drake is, and so it's just this random person saying thank you, and there's a lot of gratitude in that. But the second time, you have their experience, like their expectations at the beginning, and you can match that to what their experience ultimately was. So I just wanted to say I found it so rewarding to watch a second time, getting to learn about all these people and then go back and apply it to what the expectations were.
That's awesome.
So yeah, very, very well done there. So let's talk about the pandemic.
How can we not?
I know it's kind of a hard one to avoid. I mean, I would love to come to Vancouver, but the border is still closed currently. But yeah, there is a point in the film where the pandemic very directly affects everything about how this story is unfolding and completely changing expectations, as it does for with the vast majority of the world. And everyone's lives changed because of this. Tell me about how you guys chose to tackle that, and what challenges were involved with working around this pandemic.
Yeah. So of course, pandemic happened March 2020. We were about 7 months into filming.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, we had really found like our footing, like everything was really moving well with production. All the storylines were coming together really well. And we were like, okay, it's working. This feels good. And then all of a sudden, hello.
And it's our first feature. We're like, come on, please don't make this harder than it needs to be.
And so it happens. And I mean, the whole premise that we had pitched the whole thing on was like, we film over 12 months. And so we had to quickly figure out what can we do to continue filming. And luckily technology is pretty advanced now. And we were able to get an iPhone and bring it over to the subject's house. We drop it off in a plastic bag and all sanitized. And we'd leave them with a list of questions and kind of ideas for scenes that we thought that might fit for what they were filming. We'd leave it with them for a week. And then we would pick it up, sanitize the phone, offload the footage. And it was always like it was like a treasure box, right? You're looking through all this footage that they filmed and you're like, oh, this is really cool. And it really proved to be some of the most like intimate footage that we had captured.
And you're seeing them completely on their own terms. Like they're setting up the frames, they're figuring out what they want to have next to them, how they want to talk, what time of day they're talking. Like, I mean, with K&M, another two of Drake's sponsors. Like there's some stuff that we couldn't include in the film, but they'd film Emily was like serenading her cat walking around in the house singing. Like it's just all these moments that it's like, as the film, like we would never ever see those if we were filming with them, just as the nature you're bringing in a crew to their space. It's an entirely different experience. But the fact that the iPhone footage is something we never would have done, and it's so intimate and so like, I don't know, you see these characters like 2/3 through the film in an entirely different way, which is so special. I'm glad it happened. Well, I don't know if I'm glad it happened, but
right.
It's always good to the bad.
No, and I think that's a great example of just like making the best of the circumstance, right? I mean, it's awesome that you guys were able to continue with the production and find a creative way to do it. And now I'm wishing there's a deleted scenes. The movie hasn't come out yet, and I want deleted scenes already.
There's a lot.
I'm sure. That's such a creative way of doing it. And how did the sponsors feel about being able to participate in that way? Was that something that they naturally adapted to? Was there some a learning curve or a challenge with it?
I think like cell phones are just so integrated into our life, and everybody is so used to like capturing their daily life with the phone. So it wasn't, they were all pretty good about it. Everybody, it was kind of like our little pandemic project too. We were all bubbled and we were all just sitting around talking to each other, and then somebody would have the phone and they get to play with it for a week. And I don't know, it turned into like a little fun activity for us.
And also interesting though, because I mean, you remember that time, like I know we're like a year plus into this, and it's like, okay, we're all used to this now, but like you had no idea what was happening, really. No one knew anything about COVID. And like I think we're so fortunate with this project is like the subjects in the film, Steve and I, our producer Terry, we were a support network for each other, and this is something that we could all do together every week. We were talking, whether or not they were filming or not, we were talking and texting every day. It was like, for us, I mean, it got us through the real scary unknown first part of the pandemic, and really grateful for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. It is kind of strange watching movies that started before the pandemic and kind of eased into it, because the change is, I mean, in real life, the change was as abrupt as what happens in the movie, right? And then you remember, oh yeah, that is the current circumstance. That is, they had to adapt to that. So well done there. I really enjoyed the intimacy of that last portion of the film. Let's talk for a few minutes about you guys working together, because you've done a lot of projects together, and I don't know, what is that dynamic like with you guys? Obviously it works, but is there, what makes this work for you guys, and how does it, how do you guys like approach these things, and like who does what? Like tell me more about your guys' like creative process and how you guys make movies together.
It's funny because, well, filmmaking is a relationship business, right? Like all throughout, you are constantly working with tons of people. It is about the collaborating. It is a lot of times about compromise. Steve and I were a couple, so we've been together for 11 years. We've been doing the film stuff together for 10 years.
The film stuff.
The different, started doing commercial work, but 5 years ago, seriously got into film. So, I mean, we know how to compromise. I mean, we have a relationship outside of work, and we bring that to our projects.
We're self-taught, so we've taught ourselves everything, and we've taken on all the different roles within like the key creative positions. So it really has been. I think Sean and I are. If we don't know something, we need to figure it out, and we need to teach ourselves it. And we're very much like pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and just like do it. And so it's been a lot of work, and it's been a lot of trying to figure this out. But I think we work really well together. What I'm terrible at, Sean's really good at, and vice versa. So we can really like fill in the gaps as we go. And it just works. I mean, I always say I have no idea how one person does this. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like I just don't get it. So it's so hard.
That's so funny. Well, that resonates with me so well, because I think, teaching yourself how to do it, like that's huge, and it's a massive challenge to take on. But seeing the quality of you guys' work, clearly you figured it out enough to make really great quality films and storytelling movies. I went and watched a couple of your shorts. The one that really stood out to me was The Day That Dawn Died.
Wow.
It's another one of those because it's like this one with someone like me had a twist and completely changed what I was expecting from the documentary. The Day That Dawn Died does the exact same thing, where it's like, I think I understand where this documentary is going and what they're trying to get at, and then you like pull the rug from under me and have this entirely different message, which is completely relevant and so important for society right now. So I love that about your guys' storytelling and in how you put together a movie. It's really cool to get that out of your production. So I hope that you continue surprising people with the stories you tell and the way that you guys tell them.
Thank you.
I had a question for you, because we do like
Yeah.
asking this. I mean, you make
sure.
films in a vacuum, and you're like, okay, how did when you sat down to watch this, was this like, you sort of talked about this a little bit right now, but like, was this what you expected, or like
You know what? So in a way, I think when I started watching it, it seemed pretty straightforward to me. Like, okay, so this is going to be a documentary about bringing over someone that's in a terrible situation, them coming over here, and how this group helps nurture them into a new society, which seemed to be the case until the thing happens that when he gets there, and then my expectations were gone. I have no idea, like, I don't know where this is going, but I like what's happening, or not I like what's happening, but I'm appreciating how things are unfolding, because it did really go against what I was expecting in a really good way. And I think that it seems like something that's like an ongoing story, and I hope that when you guys do interviews down the road and people see the movie more time has passed, that we get to learn more about what happens in after the credits, right? Because there's so much about these characters that's still kind of ongoing and still developing. Not characters, people. I say characters.
We have the same thing.
But yes, no, it definitely subverted my expectations, and I think that's just kind of what happens when you're working with so much uncertainty in this kind of story. So well done navigating that and creating a film that is very interesting to watch, and and easy to rewatch as well, like I mentioned. So
yeah,
thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's
yeah,
cool.
for sure. I mean, so we've talked a lot about it. I guess my last question here is ultimately, with how much people can take away from this movie, what do you want people to take away from it? What do you want audiences to ultimately tell their friends and family about this film?
I think, well, there's a few things. I mean, just generally, it's like we had our own preconceived ideas about refugees, asylum seekers, and immigrants going into this. And I think everybody does.
For sure. I mean, it's like what's portrayed on the media, I think is like what is so common.
And like watch our film, you will meet Drake, and it is like we've had feedback from early screenings where people are like, oh, by like 10 minutes in, I didn't even think of him as an asylum seeker anymore. He is like
just a young guy trying to figure out his new life in a city.
Yeah. And like I remember driving around with him right after he showed up here, and he was singing all the songs on the radio and telling us all the shows that he's watching on Netflix and comparing notes and talking about like just how small the world is because of the internet now. Is like we saw this in this film.
I think we just have a lot more in common than we all think.
Yeah.
And there's things in culture now that makes us more connected and gives us a basis point to start connections and relationships with people.
And then like another takeaway I'd say too is like watch this film. Depends on where you are in the world, but one thing you can do is donate money to an organization like Rainbow Refugee or something similar in your country. And then if you are in a place where you can do this sponsorship work, join one of these sponsorship groups. Like it's a life-changing experience that will reframe how you think about how you support someone, how you respect someone's autonomy, how you show up for someone without judgment every day. It is like, these are life skills that we're taking away after making this. So like from everything from now on in our lives, it's just such an enriching, beautiful experience. We're so happy that we did it. So
Awesome. No, this is great. Congratulations again on the film getting into Hot Docs. I'm excited for people to see the film and to hear more reactions and to see where it goes in the world, what streaming platform it might end up on, so I can tell people to go watch it. So
Hope so.
Spread the word.
Spread the word, right? For our audiences, Steve J. Adams and Sean Horlor are the directors of Someone Like Me, making its world premiere at Hot Docs this year. And guys, thank you again for joining me on this call. I really, really appreciated this conversation. It was great.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
thanks
thanks
for having
Thomas.
us.
It's so good to chat with you.
Yeah.